Good morning, students. The story that we are going to discuss today is Diary of a Young Girl. It is about Anne Frank. Anne Frank was, of course, famous for her diary. Her diary became a very important document in history. From her diary, we get a very good idea about life during the Second World War. One gets to know about the plight and misery of the Jews during the Second World War when they were mercilessly persecuted by the Nazis. The Nazis were killing the Jews. Now, Anne Frank belonged to a Polish family. She had a Jewish origin. Naturally, to escape from the Nazis, she and her family members had to hide inside a secret annex or a secret chamber, which was situated at the basement of her father's office. So, in her diary, Anne writes about her innermost thoughts and feelings. She writes all her secrets in her diary. She writes about her childhood, her friends at school, her teachers, and other personal details of her life. Anne writes something very interesting in her diary. She writes that paper has more patience than people. She means to say that people can be judgmental and critical. People might criticize her or judge her, and people might not have the patience to listen to her. But paper will always have the patience to listen to her. That means she can write down her innermost thoughts and feelings in her diary. She regards her diary as her best friend. In fact, she names her diary Kitty. According to Anne, her diary, which she names Kitty, is her best friend, and she writes her experiences in that diary. So Anne recounts some experiences at school, her experience with certain teachers. Once, when a teacher scolded her for being too talkative in class, Anne used her wit and humor to write these interesting essays and poems to make the teacher realize his folly. So, through a PowerPoint presentation which I have prepared, we will discuss this lesson in details. Diary of a Young Girl, Glimpses of Anne Frank's Life. This is a picture of Anne Frank. Diary. A diary entry is a section of writing that has been organized by date. The entries within a diary show how you organize the thoughts, feelings, and opinions that you are pouring into it. It might contain one's heartfelt emotions and most intimate secrets. So, a diary is a very personal document. So, it contains a person's personal secrets, right? Very personal thoughts, intimate secrets. Anne was a German-born Jewish girl. After the Nazis gained power in Germany, her family moved to Amsterdam. However, Hitler and the Nazis invaded Netherlands as well, and her family had to hide in secret rooms in her father Otto Frank's office building. The Nazis were ruthlessly slaughtering Jews. Being Jewish, Anne and her family were forced to hide in order to escape persecution, to escape the Nazis, right? She was Jewish. So, to escape from the Nazis, she and her family had to hide. Jews in concentration camps. Hitler and the Nazis mercilessly tortured the Jews in concentration camps. Anne's diary covers the events in her life from 12th June 1942 to the final entry on 1st August 1944. Anne's family. This is a picture of Anne's father, Otto Frank, her sister, Margot, and Anne. The Frank family. Otto Frank and Frank's father, Margot and Frank's sister, Edith and Frank's mother. Paper has more patience than people. Anne felt that people might not be patient enough to listen to her or interrupt her while speaking. She felt people could be critical and judgmental. Anne reposed trust in her diary, which she considered to be her best friend and confidant. Unlike people, a diary would not be impatient, critical, and judgmental. A diary would not interrupt her thoughts or criticize or judge her for her words or actions. So, a diary would not criticize her or judge her for her thoughts and actions. So, she could write her innermost secrets in that diary. Anne had a loving family, relatives, and friends. Yet, Anne felt lonely. She felt she could not connect on a deeper level. Loneliness is not a state of physical being, but a state of mind. So, it is a state of mind rather than a physical state. To fulfill this void in her life, Anne wanted to pour out her innermost emotions to her diary. She regarded her diary as a friend to humanize her diary. She decided to give it a name. She called her diary Kitty. So, to make her diary seem as if it is her friend, she named her diary Kitty. Details of Anne Frank's family. Anne calls her father the most adorable father she had ever seen. So she calls her father a very lovable person. This is a picture of Anne's sister Margot Frank. Family history. Anne's father Otto Frank married her mother Edith Hollander Frank when he was 36 and Edith was 25. Anne's sister Margot was born in Frankfurt, Germany in 1926. Anne was born on 12 June 1929. Anne's father emigrated to Holland in 1933. So, Anne's father moved to Holland or Netherlands in 1933. In 1933, Hitler and the Nazi Party came to power in Germany. Anne Frank's grandmothers. These are the pictures of Anne Frank's grandmothers. Anne's parents moved to Holland and Anne and Margot lived with their grandmother in Aachen for a few months. When her parents moved to Holland, she was forced to stay with her grandmother. Anne was fond of her teacher and headmistress, Mrs. Kuperus. Mrs. Kuperus, the headmistress, was Anne's teacher in the 6th form or the 6th class. Teacher and student shared a deep bond of affection. Both Anne and Mrs. Kuperus bid a tearful goodbye to each other at the end of the year. So Mrs. Kuperus was very fond of Anne and Anne was also very fond of her teacher, Mrs. Kuperus. And she cried or wept when she was promoted to class 7 because that would mean that the same teacher would not teach her any longer. Anne's grandmother passed away in January 1942. Anne writes in her diary that she loved her grandmother and thought about her. Grandma's candle was lit in fond memory of her on Anne's birthday in 1942. Anne was truly fond of her. She loved her grandmother very much, and this shows that she loved her grandmother. Anne starts writing about the present. So we move to the present in the diary. That is the present when she is writing this. 20th June 1942, Anne recounts the experience of herself and her classmates waiting anxiously for their results. Many were unsure of getting promoted. Many students did not know whether they would pass or fail. Anne was unsure of passing in maths. Anne writes that she got along well with all her teachers. However, the old-fashioned maths teacher would scold her regularly for being too talkative in class. The maths teacher, Mr. Keesing, told Anne to write an essay on the subject, a chatterbox, as punishment for her talkativeness. Chatterbox is a person who talks too much. Anne displayed her wit and sense of humor in her essay. Anne wrote that talking in class was a character trait of students which could not be changed. Further, Anne wrote that she had inherited the trait of talkativeness from her own mother, who talked too much. Thus, Anne made her maths teacher laugh. So, Anne used her wit and humor to make her teacher laugh. She said that it was an inherited trait and thus she could not help being talkative. Mr. Keesing asked Anne to write on the topic an incorrigible chatterbox. Incorrigible, a person who cannot be remedied or rectified. Quack, 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 said Mistress Chatterbox, the third topic given to Anne by Mr. Keesing. Anne wrote a humorous poem with her friend Sans help. The poem was about a mother duck, Father Swan and 3 baby ducklings who were bitten to death by their father because they quacked too much. Anne symbolically shows Mr. Keesing his folly, that is his mistake, in scolding her repeatedly. He too took the joke in the right spirit. Mr. Keesing too became jovial and used to teach with a sense of humor in class. So, Anne, through this poem, symbolically made the teacher understand his mistake in scolding Anne all the time. Okay? Through the story of the father swan who scolded the ducklings, and finally the ducklings were bitten to death by the father. So that she means to say that the teacher should leave her alone and not pester her all the time, not tell her to not be talkative in class. Okay. Anne was creative and witty. Her diary documents life during the Holocaust and also reveals her experiences as a teenager. This is the secret annex where Anne Frank and her family had to hide to escape from the Jews. So this is her father, the family picture. Thank you very much. With that, we come to the end of this presentation.